entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings Week 3 recap. Yeah, we missed the Sunday Night Live show on Week 3. It's a bummer. If people don't know that Hurricane Fiona smacked us up here where I live, and I got power back at my house. Everyone's fine. Don't worry about that. There's like a few trees down across the city. Problem is, like, the power went out everywhere, and our local power supply, not super efficient. I mean, the power itself is not super efficient, but getting it fixed, not in a very timely manner. They do that thing where they tell you, like, the estimated time of everything coming back. You go check online. I looked at the studio, because the studio is still without power at the moment. That's why we had to cancel the Sunday night show, because we can't run that operation off a generator. Too much power. Too much going on inside that studio. There's like 30 lights. Beyond all of the computer equipment, the internet, the cameras, everything like that. So we couldn't run it out of this room because this room is physically too small to fit me and Cust in it at the same time. We thought about doing it audio only, but we said, you know what? That show is supposed to have a vibe. That once we finish watching the games, or the games are just wrapping up, what is the reaction that's going on? And we were not going to be able to fake that. And I don't want to release a show where we're trying to fake anything. So I decided to do a solo show here. So smash the like to the episode, sub to Mayo Media Network. Hopefully you can get along with this one. Hopefully we have power back by Tuesday. I think we can get away with doing the spread pick show from here if need be. It might be a little bit wonky in terms of the graphics and everything like that. But everyone's audio should be leveled at least, because we'll record all 3 tracks separately, unlike that we do in the Giant studio. A little behind-the-scenes play from Mayo Media Network here. I'll have my Monday night preview, prize picks, waiver wire, and injury report. That's all in the newsletter, the injury stuff. But that show is going to be out later today on Mayo Media Network, and we will have, it's up on the Fantasy Football Picks and Bets feed. So if you're an audio listener and you want more Mayo and Tambo in your life, we do that 3 times a week. It's a short show to get you ready for props, island games, everything like that. If you haven't done it, go check it out. Leave a rating and review while you're over there as well. Let's jump into the games, though, because I thought I was able to watch all the football. It's just weird to be able to consume all this football and not actually be able to talk about it, because I've been doing that every Sunday for, what is it now? 13 years, something crazy like that. You're starting to see the age marks on the face, how long I've been grinding Sundays for this. So let's jump into it. Let's go to the Sunday night game to begin with. The Broncos win. Good looking teams there. Both defenses actually looked really good. I don't know if Russ is cooking. Someone actually pointed out that if by letting Russ cook, it was actually like when Tim tried to cook steak by spraying Pam on it. That's kind of what it's looking like in Denver right now. I don't know if I want to give up on the Broncos, because the defense does appear to be coming around a little bit. And a lot of that had to do, San Francisco was doing all right offensively until Trent Williams went out. And then Trent Williams went out. Maybe he's secretly the best player in football. Who knew how much of a linchpin he was to that team? I figure with Kittle coming back, that they would have just having the underrated part about it's not underrated. People who know, but most people think, oh, here's George Kittle, great fantasy guy. Nah, that's a thing. It's just like TJ Hawkinson on the Detroit Lions, where they're so good at the line of scrimmage blocking. It's like the old school Gronk thing. It's like there's a reason that these guys are basically surefire Hall of Famers. It's not just what they do in terms of the receiving game. I mean, probably not Hawkinson, but Kittle for sure, I think, in this circumstance now. But just like the way that he allows you to win at the line of scrimmage, and that was working, and then Williams goes out, and they were no longer winning on the left side anymore, so that was a real problem. I don't know what to make of these teams. There are probably no bets going forward unless put it this way. I went to sleep early last night. Just a weekend of having no power, trying to fire up generators, wrangle the kids. I watched this in the 15-minute condensed game when I was on the Stairmaster this morning. Got up early, hit the gym. They had power, so that was fantastic news. And it's 15 minutes of my life I'm never going to get back. That was horrible. I pity the fools who stayed up to watch that. I mean, if I was still up, I probably would have switched out to Dragon House at some point. Instead, my wife and I saved that for Mondays while I do my rankings and have the football game on a split screen as we're watching Dragon House. Hopefully it gets better. Who knows? Bucs and Packers, both these teams are probably going to go to the NFC Championship game. It's just funny to see them. I mean, I severely underrated how much the heat in Florida was going to impact teams. And maybe it wasn't this game. Maybe it was just a complete lack of skill position players. Bakhtiari ends up coming back. That's great news. You got to see the protection was a little bit better for the Packers than it had been in previous weeks. But Rodgers, I mean, this is the new reality of what he's dealing with. Romeo Doubs looks like a real guy in terms of how Rodgers can utilize him. They get Christian Watson hopefully back next week. Obviously, Sammy Watkins is out for a while, but the defense looked good for the first time all year. Now, is that a product of them actually being good, or is that a product of Tampa Bay's 3 top receivers are out, their next 2 are banged up, they signed Cole Beasley off the street, and the offensive line is completely banged up, and Brady looks like out of whack a little bit. I have no worries about the Bucs. If I was the Bucs looking at that division and knowing that you're probably going to win it anyway because apparently the Saints are god-awful as well, that just start whoever at quarterback for like the next month. Just play like your practice squad team. Take 3 losses if you have to. Get to October and then like start ramping everyone back up because no one on this team looks healthy at the moment. The more you play through injury, the more banged up that you're going to be. There's no need to rush any of these guys. Like Tampa, what does Tampa care if they get the 1 seed or not? They don't. They care about making the playoffs, and their easiest path to making the playoffs is going to be through winning that awful division. So, you never want to Brady gets hurt, they're screwed anyway. But I don't know. It reminded me, I'm not going to be the only one who makes this comparison. It just reminded me of Brady's last year in New England. Like, it was a real throwback game for the Patriots fans who just want to remember Brady how he was at the end of the New England run. He was thrown to absolute goobers. Russell Gage was the only guy who could get open, so they just pepper him with targets. But he puts one on the ground. Perriman puts one on the ground. Like, Tampa Bay really should have won that game. There was a point. It was really strange. I think Brady was 8 for 8 to start the game for like 50 yards passing. They had 1 first down. It's kind of nuts. In terms of like Fournette's gonna be fine once, and they're finding him ways to get fantasy points. Most of it was towards the end in terms of the receptions. But he's going to be fine as the season goes along. Once that offensive line gets healthier, they're going to be a lot better. But these two teams, although they played like crap the entire time, it was nice to see the defenses be locked in. This is what I expected from both these teams coming into the year. And listen, Rodgers and Brady, they're old men now. Old men. It's like starting an old car. You need to give it a few revs before you kick it going for the entire year. So by November, they're going to be absolutely fine when defense starts to make a little bit more sense and teams aren't putting up 50 points every single time. Bills lose. I lose in Survivor. I am out. Thank God I won in week 1 in Survivor because I'm at a round 2 of Survivor right now. It's funny because the game didn't feel like I lost money on the Bills, and I bet them on that alt spread, which I would go back and do again even after watching the game because they were driving down before they missed the field goal in the second half. And I was like, okay, they'll score a touch before they miss the field goal. I was like, okay, they're going to score a touchdown here because the Dolphins absolutely cannot stop them. So it's going to be a 10-point game. This is going to be great. Tua's going to have to force everything coming in. They're going to get some pressure, and then boom, pick 6. I'm going to get my alt minus 16.5 cover. Now, from that point of the game, maybe I shouldn't have thought it. Maybe I pulled a cust and absolutely flipped it the wrong way, but everything looked out of whack after that. But the Bills, like you read, when we talked about it on the spread show, I said, like, it's either a Bills blowout or the Dolphins probably win a close game. And that's what ended up happening because Dolphins just love greasy games. This is how they do it. The way that they defended Josh Allen was great. And I know that the Dolphins only ran 39 plays in this game. The Bills ran 90 plays. Like, the Dolphins couldn't stop them. But they did a great job of limiting the damage. Nothing behind them. They were blitzing from everywhere. And that's how you're going to have to play Josh Allen. If you don't have like Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the ball, someone who can go toe for toe and scoring points offensively, how can you create an imbalance anywhere? And it's just getting in his face. And it's almost like what I thought would happen with Tua, and it kind of did. He finally hit the deep one to Waddle down the field. But I wasn't too concerned about the Bills' secondary problems because I didn't think that Tua would have enough time to throw the ball. And he really didn't. Like, he had to get it out so quickly every single time. And when you're throwing guys in your face and he doesn't have the mobility of a Josh Allen, it's just going to lead to not a whole lot of offense. They got the turnover, almost like in the Colts game. Like, they got the turnover inside the 5. They're able to punch that in. They really capitalized on everything that came their way, and they're a very opportunistic team. They're 11-1 in their past 12 games. Like, I'm not saying the Dolphins are bad. They've been a team I was riding until this week. But, like, you run that game 10 times, the Bills win by over 20, it feels like, in 7 of them, until everyone just started cramping and going out of the game. But even on the other side, like, Xavier Howard was going in and out, Diggs, Gabe Davis, they were all going in and out. When the Bills started dropping O-linemen, that wasn't great. And we were watching the game in real time when the Bills should have won, when Josh Allen pulled a Matt Ryan on the 4th down when he threw the most timely bounce pass in the biz. It looked like the ball slipped out of his hands. And someone actually threw this up on Twitter They showed, because last week it was like, hey, here's the mirror version of Tua. Here's what it looks like if he throws right-handed. You just flip the screen around. It's like, oh, wow, Tua looks amazing. There is a bias towards left-handed quarterbacks. So they flipped around Josh Allen and threw some of his throws during that game, and it's like, this guy is garbage. Like, he doesn't know how to throw a football. It's just so funny seeing it from that different perspective of how it's going to go. The Dolphins are for real because they're well coached. They really are. They're limiting their mistakes, and they seem to know what offense they have, and they tailor their offense to every single opponent and their defense. I know that every team tailors their offense and defense to specific opponents, but they generally have a shell of what they like to do. But the way that Miami defended this week was completely different than they tried to defend last week against the Ravens. It was a similar concept, but they were able to break through. They were sending corner blitzes. It was just like, Josh Allen, you now have 3 seconds or less to throw the ball every single time. You will not be able to go over the top of us. Let's see if you can keep this up. And Allen looks like he might have got banged up in the game. Obviously, Tua got banged up at half and then came back. That wasn't looking good. Cuss was in his glory with Teddy Bridgewater starting because he was going to give Teddy Bridgewater all the credit, but Teddy Bridgewater did not look good in that spot. So it was a very interesting game. I mean, I didn't expect anyone to go 17-0. I'm not worried about the Bills. I think there are teams that will be able to take advantage of their beat-up secondary a little bit more than Miami was able to do, because even their blocking, it's not like Tua was dropped a bunch, but they had guys in his face the entire time. And where he is a bit shorter, just throw your hands up. It's tough to get those little dink and dunks over the middle to get Hill in space, to get Waddle in space. So that's going to be interesting. I still think the Bills win the AFC East, but I'm wrong all the time, as people saw. It was like with the bets. It's funny. I think I went 1-1-1 with the bets this week because Houston ended up pushing. Fucking Houston. But looking back at the spread show, I think I had a horrible spread picks week. But I'm not Cam. I don't bet every game. So, like, even when I have a bad week, as long as I hit the bets that I'm the most in on, now the Bills ended up losing, but the Falcons was my biggest bet. They ended up coming through. That's great. I ended up pushing with Houston. We move on to next week, and then got that awesome Guido hit in the morning, shooting -9 over in France to hit a 50-1. That's always glorious stuff when you can wake up and be like, oh, my guy's actually doing the opposite of what happens on the European tour every year. Like, Hogard had like a 7-stroke lead at one point. Anyway, more on that in the golf show. I'm talking Sanderson Farms this week, and Sky and Tom are talking Alfred Dunhill, which is by far the better tournament. That's where all the good guys are playing this week in the 3-course rotation at St. Andrews, Carnoustie, and somewhere else. There's a third one in there as well. For the life of me, I can't remember what it is right now. It's early in the morning. I've been trying to scroll things on my phone all weekend. It hasn't been great. So Bills, I'm fine with them. Falcons and Seahawks. Here's one that came through. The Falcons offense looks so good. And for daily fantasy purposes, it's so concentrated. It's great. It's like those old school Oakland offenses with Carr, Amari Cooper, and Michael Crabtree, where the ball is going one of 3 places in, I guess, one of 4 places if you include Mariota running the ball. But Mariota only throws to Pitts and Drake London. Then you get some Zacchaeus in there, but we're not too worried about those. Kadarius Hodge last week. But those 2 guys get going. Mariota's going to run, and they hand the ball off to CPAT. That's their offense, and it is extremely efficient. It's actually really good. And if they don't make any bonehead mistakes, like Mariota, with the fumbled snap when they had the chance to put the game out, they had the turnover earlier in the first quarter as well. Just like Seattle shouldn't have been in that game. It shouldn't even been close. And their defense is horrible. But so was Atlanta's, and that's going to be the real problem. But they're going to score points on teams that you think have good defenses too. So keep that in mind with the Falcons going forward. They're now 3-0 against the spread. They've been a cash cow for me. My to make the playoffs bet is not looking good on them, but they are a lot better, especially on the offensive side of the ball, than I think that anyone else really would have thought. Mariota, extremely competent. And just look for overs in Falcons games moving forward, because I think they're going to score like 20 to 30 points every single week, and they're always going to be downtrodden by the market because people just assume that they're bad because their defense is bad. It is bad. All they had 2 great, that sack on Geno when they were pressing on 3rd down basically won them the game. It was kind of crazy. So, they're generating far more pressure than the team that generated no pressure last year. Houston and the Bears. My Bears under 5.5 bet is starting to sweat at the moment. This is one that I needed severely. Funny, when Davis Mills was pressing at the end of the game, and I forget, it was 3rd and something in there, on their own 20, whatever it was. I was like, okay, maybe we can get into field goal range. But I was like, I looked at the score. I looked at Cuss. It was 20-20. I was like, what are the chances this game just ends in a tie? 20-20 with no one being able to do anything. Fields is horrible. It is truly bad. And I don't know if it's a scheming thing. I don't know if it's a blocking thing, a no weapons thing. Could be anything. But I just am not seeing it. He's throwing butter ducks out there. Like, those picks are just floaters. Floating. It was almost like the Derek Carr to Matt Collins touchdown in the Tennessee game. It was just like, I'm just going to basically be Chad Pennington on this one. I'm just going to throw it real high. You just stand there for a bit and time it when it comes down, catch it, don't worry about it. It's going to be a touchdown. Fields tries to do that, but they're just wobblers to the other team. I mean, Davis Mills, no great shakes either. Pierce looked good. Herbert looked awesome in replace of David Montgomery. I don't know how long Montgomery's going to be out, but fantasy-wise, obviously he's going to be like the pickup that you want this week, as long as he's out an extended period of time, because Dalvin Cook sounds like he's going to play, even with the separate. He separates his shoulders so much that it's like, oh yeah, just pop it back in. We're not going to worry about it. But one bad hit could take him out. We've seen that with Dalvin Cook in the past, but everyone owns Madison, so it's not a big deal. Stupid Bears. Hate the Bears. Hate that they're making me look foolish. But, that happens from time to time. What else do we got? Rams and Cardinals. Cardinals are... I feel like I need to bet on the Cardinals this week because everyone's just like, oh my God, like they shouldn't have beat the Raiders. They got blown out week 1 by the Chiefs. They played the Rams. But if you went into the year and said those were the 3 teams that they played, you'd be like, oh, those are 3 really good teams. I could see how they could be 0-3. Well, they're not even 0-3. They're 1-2. They make boneheaded decisions. Like, they love kicking field goals from the 1-yard line. That's a big Cliff Kingsbury special. Good for you, Cliff. Would you get some more fucking hair gel? Maybe take some out. Take some of the gel out. Maybe it's enter something with your brain. I don't know how this stuff is kind of mixing. Does he take like preventative Rogaine to make sure he's injecting it into his brain, causing him to make horrible decisions? I don't get what's going on there. But like Hollywood Brown, you bring him in to be a burner, and then all of a sudden it's 14 catches for 140 yards. Like, what the hell is that? Like, no, we want like 3 catches for 200 yards. You get behind the defense and score touchdowns, pal. We don't need you to be possession. They just have a team of possession receivers at this point. And then Zach Ertz can't catch, apparently. I don't know what's going on with the team. They seem like they're bad, but Kyler has enough juice, and every third week, every second week, he's just going to do something incredible, and he's going to will teams back. I forget who they're playing this week. We'll cover that on the spread show. This is a recap show. Jags and Chargers. Herbert's not right at all. He still can fucking sling it. It's incredible. Lawrence looks awesome. The Jags looks awesome. I think they're 7-point dogs in Philly this week. That just feels like everyone's... I don't know what the sentiment between Philly and Jacksonville is. Like, everyone believes in Philly. Do people believe in Jacksonville? I'm hoping that Jacksonville keeps this up, cashes that 9-1 AFC South ticket for us, but... They look great. They look efficient. Like, Lawrence looks like a guy who should have been picked first overall. He's not making any mistakes anymore. And if anyone ever wants to talk about how coaches matter, coaches don't matter, I mean, at the highest end, I think that a bad coach matters than having a really great coach in the NFL. But if you have a bad, like really bad coach, it can just be a disaster for your team. I think that's what we saw with Jacksonville last year, because Lawrence looks like the guy that everyone thought he was going to be when he was drafted. And not anything like the guy we saw last year. His efficiency is off the charts. His precision is off the charts. And to juxtapose him with Mac Jones, who we saw, Mac Jones had the most anti-Mac Jones game ever. And now he has a high ankle sprain, so he might be like out a month or something like that. But Mac Jones, you think, oh, he's basically Chad Pennington 2.0 with a little bit of a better arm, a little bit more mobility. We saw the mobility. Like, he kept trying to run. I thought he was going to get, eventually caught up to him, I suppose. But he ended up rushing in the touchdown. He was picking up first downs with his legs. They ran some of the worst 4th down plays I've ever seen in my life. It's one thing to like not have a ton of short yardage plays from midfield, but let's not throw it to the sticks on 4th and 2 and just like, hey, hopefully our guy can make the other guy miss. This is not a great play. Not a real high percentage 4th down play. The Lions did it the other way until the end when they started doing that shit too. On 4th and 3, 4th and 4, they kept going for it and they kept getting it. And every time that they got it, it was like a 3-step or 5-step drop and just lasers from Goff over the middle of the field, 15 yards downfield. The fact that more teams don't take advantage of the entire field on 4th down because they only need 1 yard is ludicrous. The fact that you can actually spread the field out, screw this jumbo formation, spread everyone out, give your quarterback an option for the shotgun draw, if that's going to end up being the case. It's not a real high percentage one, but if it's there, you can take it. But once you start dealing with the entire field, it's a lot easier to get 3 yards that way than it is putting 9 guys on the line and trying to jam it into 9 other guys. And even when it comes down to measuring the sticks, if the refs don't give you the benefit of the spot, there's no way to overturn it, even if you got it, because there's no cameras in there. You can't see anything. So no one's ever really factoring these things into it when you're looking at 4th down. Totally forgot what I was talking about at this point. Patriots, Lions, Jags. Jags are good. Yeah. They're just really good. So I'm don't necessarily know about their defense. Their defenses looked really good, obviously. They played a banged-up Herbert, and they played Matt Ryan, who's absolute garbage, and they played Carson Wentz, so they gave a bunch of points to. That's going to happen from time to time, but I don't know. I don't. If their defense is like average, their offense is good. They can run the ball. They're very good at these intermediate routes, and they don't even need to really take shots. They just kind of progressively move the ball down the field. That's a very easy way to sustain a lot of offense, to extend drives and protect your defense, even if it's not great. So if the Jags potentially have like a top 12 offense, especially a passing offense, how is James Robinson's Achilles so fine, and Cam Akers, although Cam Akers is starting to get it back a little bit now, finally out touching Darrell Henderson, scoring the touchdown. But like, how is he fine on shorter rest than Cam Akers has? But I guess it's Achilles don't recover the same way in everyone. I mean, that would make a lot of sense, but just crazy to see how much more spry he is. And they're able to use ETN as that sort of, as to quote Cust about Ty Montgomery, the queen on the chessboard. He was taking direct snaps. And just his speed is off the charts good. So Panthers and Saints, every week we always talk about the laptop game, that we have our 8 TVs and one of them is dedicated to red zone in the bottom left. And this week we had 2 extra games. We had a laptop game and then a game we were just like, we don't really need to watch this one. This is another one that I condensed watch. These teams are horrible. Olave got there. Olave's good, but Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas both left that game. I don't know. Jameis doesn't throw to Kamara. I don't know what to make of the Panthers. Like, Baker's not good. Like, he throws a touchdown to Shenault. It was like a backwards pass. Shenault made a guy miss and took off down the field. So I don't really know what's going on. Like, DJ Moore is borderline unplayable in fantasy. They don't throw to McCaffrey anymore. It's just McCaffrey. Here, you have 25 carries for 110 yards. Go for it. Have fun with it. I don't know what's going on here. Carolina is such an interesting team because you can make the case, hey, their defense actually looks pretty good despite the terrible offense. But if we think that the Saints offense is bad, like, what are we doing now? They haven't played a real offense. They played Brissett, Daniel Jones, and Jameis Winston. Eventually, you have to give them credit because they're out there and the defense is playing well. But I don't know what's going on with them. Jets and Bengals. The Jets had just not kicked field goals and tried to score touchdowns. They maybe could have won this game. Maybe the Bengals just like took everything off the gas. They didn't care anymore, but they didn't look great for a team that won by as much as they did. And the Jets were like committed to kicking as many. I guess the over on Legatron field goals was something Robert Saleh bet on. So I guess they got to kick as many as possible. When you're a garbage team, you might just want to say, you know what? Screw field goals. What are we going to lose? 30-3? Why don't we just continue to try to score as many touchdowns as possible? You go draft Garrett Wilson, got hurt. He ended up coming back. They don't use Elijah Moore at all. They did the opposite of what happened with Michael Carter and Breece Hall through the first 2 games where Carter was going to be the receiving back. That looked pretty much in stone. He had the 10 targets last week. This week it was flipped, mainly because Breece Hall was in during the 2-minute drill. I think he had like 4 catches in a row at some point. Ty Conklin's a real problem for people, too. That's who Flacco likes to throw to. Zach Wilson is expected back this week, and since he has this quick turnaround, Thursday night against the Dolphins. See how that goes. I actually like the Dolphins in that game. If they can put as much pressure on Burrow, which they should be able to, as they just did to Josh Allen, it's going to be trouble for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati offense, unless he's learned how to, throw the ball quicker and not just stand there like an absolute sieve. But the Jets, Zach Wilson, we'll see how they look with Zach Wilson. Will they be more efficient? Will they be better? Will they be much worse? Because Flacco hasn't been terrible. He hasn't been good by any means, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Jets right now. I thought their defense would actually be better, and it's not. Eagles and Commanders. Hurts continues to absolutely light it up. They scored all of their points in the second quarter, and that was it. No more for them the rest of the game. The Wentz correlation theory could have worked if Washington could have had the ability to come back in that game. Wentz, wasn't holding on to the ball, just dropping it for no reason, getting sacked 9 times, just play defenses against Wentz. Then if you play Wentz against them in that second half, all he has to do is go YOLO ball. It just didn't come through this week. But their offensive line is horrible. Wentz is horrible, but he's someone who can throw the ball like 50 yards downfield and doesn't care if it gets picked off. Usually it's like old school Jameis, where Jameis doesn't do that anymore. He did it at like the very end of the game when they were out of time. And we saw it last week against the Bucs in that same situation. But Wentz is just doing this all game. This is like his only move, and that's what he's going for. Eagles, real deal. Co-favorites in the NFC right now. Want to see them get punched in the teeth a little bit and how they rebound. It's funny, with the Bills, it's almost good that the Bills, it's never good that you lose. But they lost a game that they probably should have won. And then getting this loss out of the way early with the way that people were talking about the Bills. Now, they were the clear favorite to win. I still think that they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl. We'll see how their defense can evolve with all of these injuries. Like, they were starting back undrafted free agents after their second tier corners started going down in that game against Miami. But eventually that will get rectified. Tre'Davious White's going to come back. I don't really worry. Ed Oliver will end up coming back pretty soon as well. So I'm not really worried about their defense. It's probably not going to be a lights out unit like we've seen, but it's probably good that they get the loss out of the way now. That doesn't hang over you anymore. I want to see what happens with the Eagles. If they can run this up to 7-0, 8-0, because we always see sort of the front-running rabbit team every single year, and that team never usually ends up being there at the end of the season. Once they hit the skids, they've been riding high for so long, you don't get that experience from coming behind and facing that adversity, and it comes too late in the season before you can get those reps and really be comfortable in that situation. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Ravens and Patriots. Patriots probably should have won this game. Lamar continues to play spectacularly. The Ravens defense sucks. And it's not their fault. Everyone's hurt. But when Devontae Parker's lighting you up, that is a bad sign. And it's Ravens and Bills this week. I don't know how people are going to judge this game. And the Ravens offense can most definitely put up 40 points on the Bills. That's how the Ravens win this game. It's not going to be a 17-14 affair. I'm assuming it's going to open at 53.5. I could go look, but I'm doing this in real time. Want to get this done, get this out to the peoples, and this is where we're at right now. So I'm looking at it. Ravens offense completely fine. Their defense, something to be. There's a lot out there for the Ravens defense. They can get healthy. Maybe they can be fine. If they can develop a pass rush, maybe they can be fine. Just not seeing that right now. And when Mac Jones and Tua are lighting you up and you got Josh Allen coming to town, could be severe problems for that defense. So you're going to need another Lamar 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing game. Fortunately, he can do that. He's done it each of the past 2 weeks. Mac Jones might be out, he might go on IR. Maybe he plays this week, but it seems like he has a high ankle sprain. So now we're getting Hoyer as the Patriots quarterback. That's not good. Myers missed this game. That seemed to really hurt them at the beginning. I thought they would use Kendrick Bourne a lot more in that role, but it just never really came to fruition. Lions went full Lions. I knew the Lions were in trouble when Cuss looked at me when it was 14-0. I was sitting next to him. He's like, I told you the Lions were going to win. I was like, oh, here we go. And the Vikings, the Lions are getting there. They really are. So their offense, it looks fine. It hits the skids. DeAndre Swift was in and out of that game. He was limping all around. He's clearly not 100%. And they kept going for it on fourth down, like I mentioned earlier, to juxtapose with the Patriots. And even their 2-point play was just god-awful. And Ramondre almost got himself out of it by lateraling it back to Mac Jones. Unfortunately, he was down. But their ideas in these short yardage, fourth down, 2-point conversion situations are mind-boggling. Where I like what the Lions do. The Lions went for it. It's funny. They went for it the entire game, and they settled for that stupid field goal at the end, which was very clearly not going to go in, and just gave Minnesota the best field position possible. It was a really stupid decision. I would at least prefer, if you go for it, what is it? That put you up 6? Great. Fantastic news. That's great for you, Detroit. You get to be up 6. Can your defense stop anyone? Well, it wasn't looking so good in the second half of that game. At least if you go for it on fourth down. Yes, I realize you'd be in the same place if you don't convert than whether you hit the field goal or not. But at least if you get the first down, you can basically ice the game and it's over. With a field goal, the game's not over. And then you still have to kick off anyway. And so worst case, they're probably at the 25. And then they have to go from there with no timeouts and try to score a touchdown. It's plausible when you have the horses that they have on the Vikings and the way that the defense had been playing. I thought the better move, they kept going for it on fourth down, seemed like a really silly decision. If you were committed to doing that all game long, why don't you continue to do that? Because they didn't get the last one, or they didn't get the last two. They went 3 for 3 to start the game on fourth down. I think they missed the last 2, and then they got cold feet. Don't play your game. Don't worry about the results. Play your game. You're not going to get every fourth down. It's just not going to happen. But if you get 3 of 5, then you should almost go for it every single time in these situations. You should probably go for it every single time, midfield and beyond. But if you're going to convert it at that high of a rate, that's not a bad thing. That'd be like someone in baseball being like, well, you went 2 for 5 today. You had a terrible game. You're only hitting 400. It's what are we talking about here? These are fractional situations that if you can be around 60, 55, 65% on fourth downs, you are crushing the game. No need to have a kicker on your team at that point. Craziness. Chiefs and Colts. To all the people who came at all of us, I think all of us picked the Colts this week. The Colts should have lost by 5 million points, but it was the trap line of the week. The Bills also a trap line, but I think more people were actually on Miami to beat the Bills and keep that game close. But this one was, I mean, the Chiefs can't run the ball. That's a problem. Didn't realize the Colts' run defense was so good, because it's not. And Mahomes just had it, like, Kelsey dropped 2 touchdowns. It was just a really weird game. And you don't want to say anything is rigged, because it's not rigged. But this game, if you're ever going to rig a football game, this is what it would look like. I'm pretty sure that you have muff punts, and then all of a sudden the Patrick Mahomes looks completely discombobulated despite facing no pressure the entire game. Matt Ryan looks god-awful through 3.9 quarters, and then on the final drive, he's like actually hitting people. It's like, okay, this is shocking. Did not expect Matt Ryan to do this. When comes the part of the game where he just drops the ball for no reason? That only happened once, so that was pretty good. Don't do that 4 times in a game, and all of a sudden the Colts can be okay. The Colts look like they stink. Like, the fact they can't get Jonathan Taylor going whatsoever, and they actually had their receivers back this week. Pittman finally got there towards the end of the game in total receiving, but I don't know. Something's up in Indianapolis is not good. They might be better off with Nick Foles playing quarterback, and I was waiting for that to happen throughout the course of the game. The Chiefs, I throw them in the same sort of camp as the Bucs and the Packers, just like they look like they're on cruise control right now. They're just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work for them. And one of these teams isn't going to be fine by November, obviously. That just never works out that way. But these teams that we perceive to be really good, they're going to end up being fine for the most part. The protection was still really good for Patrick Mahomes. You give him time, he's eventually going to figure all this out. Raiders and Titans. Nice to see the Titans get Derrick Henry going, get Robert Woods going a little bit in this game. It's funny, the Raiders are 0-3. They can most definitely be 3-0 at this point. Just the Mac Hollins touchdown really made me chuckle. The Mac Hollins was the play on DraftKings. I faded him completely. I was like, I'm not playing chalky Mac Hollins at $3,300. That's crazy. And then that's how you lose money. But you don't win every week, so you have to make these sort of decisions from time to time. The Raiders, I don't know if they're going to be fine because they're 0-3. That's not good, obviously. But maybe they can squeeze out a win against the Chargers. We're going to have some fun on Wednesday show with Jeff, where I think Cuss asked me the question. I was like, you write that one down, you ask Jeff in real time. And Jeff doesn't watch this show, so there's no worries about him losing. Was the upgrade of Staley from Anthony Lynn really an upgrade? Is Staley just a horrible coach? And then Jeff will go off the rails after he won so much money this weekend. Because he might have won like 10 grand on the President's Cup. Just he kept pounding those American lines like June, July, August. Like he got them all at like minus 330, minus 300. Ended up going off like minus 800. And it got dicey for like 30 seconds on Sunday, and that was the end of it for the President's Cup. But that's my recap. That's my game by game. I hope you enjoyed something like this. Listen, this is going to be a regular thing every single week, but I wanted to get something out there, get my thoughts out about the game. You can come laugh at me for my terrible picks this week. But hey, you're going to have if you can really avoid 4 really bad weeks, you're going to have 2 or 3 really good weeks with picks, and you're going to have 2 or 3 really bad weeks with picks. It's the NFL. It's super random a lot of the time. You just need to not get crushed too much throughout the year, that it needs to even itself out. Rob was 3-0 again. Rob was 8-1 to start the season on the Best Bet Show. We swept Super Locks on the show. We swept Gold Picks. And usually when you hit your best bet of the week, it saves a lot of what you're doing depending on how I bet. That's how I bet. Like I said with Cam, that's not how he bets. Probably I used to sit next to him at Fantasy, and I think we've told the story on the golf show before, but you can star if you're unfamiliar with the PGA leaderboard. You can star people. It pushes them to the top of the leaderboard if you want to track those guys in particular. He had the entire leaderboard starred, so we just had 2 complete leaderboards. I was like, do you have bets on all these guys? Oh yeah. It's outright bets, top 20 bets, missed the cut bets, head-to-head bets. He probably had 78 bets on Thursday of a golf tournament. So we're not thinking, it's same as when Morency, we used to work with him as well, they still do the show together, and they just love firing bets. I mean, firing bets is fun. I find for the NFL, the more condensed that I make it, the better it ends up becoming. So I'll be back, Fantasy Football Picks and Bets, with the Fantasy Football Breakdown, back with Jake tomorrow on the PME, and I should have Sanderson Farms out later today as well. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!